Matt, it's so amazing to see you today. How are you?
Doing fantastic, Laura. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing really, really, really well. So, for everybody that may not know who we are, this is the incredible Matt Schmidt, and I am going to ask him to tell us all about himself. Go for it, Matt.
Well, I originally started my career as a scientist. I was working in drug development, working on central nervous system disorders and cancer. And at that time, having all my own like physical issues. I think at one point I was on like 14 medications. I was having like grand mal seizures every week. And that led me to basically my all these like physical problems, like I didn't think there was other solutions for, like I just kept taking more and more medications, and like that was the only way that I knew. Well, as you know, like the universe kind of nudges us in the direction we're supposed to go. So once that path was done, it was like basically like 10 years of like things not working out. And then I just kind of like threw in the towel and just started questioning everything. That led me to a bunch of amazing like teachers, Dolores Cannon being one of them, and just questioning everything. At that time, I had my first QHHT session. I immediately stopped having seizures that day. Haven't had any since. In 2 months, I was off all 14 medications, and that's where I found out I was supposed to be shifting my focus and doing the work that we're going to be talking about today. So I kind of had to get dragged to be here, but like it's been amazing. I can't imagine doing anything else now. And now I get to give that gift to other people. So it's been pretty amazing.
That's an incredible story. Wow, that's
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. So, having that QHHC session just absolutely changed your life.
It changed my whole world. Yeah, I didn't even know it was an option to like live another way. So at that time, I was sleeping like 2 or 3 hours a night and thinking that was normal. After 40 years, you just guess that's how you are. And then like after that day, I started sleeping every single night. No medications for anything. It was just incredible. As a side effect, I lost 60 pounds in 2 months just from stuff my mind was hanging on to. Like, I mean, I had this like death grip on everything, and
Yeah,
yeah, it just shifted everything for me. So,
that's amazing. And I've seen you around for a long time in this space now. And for anybody that doesn't know who I am, I'm Laura Whitworth. I'm the founder of Soul Center Healing Hypnosis, and I'm also a QHHT practitioner. I am a clinical hypnotherapist and psychotherapist. And Matt and I, we do similar sessions. We help people with these amazing quantum sessions, and we help them to find out who they are in different spaces in the universe, and also to heal their soul, basically, as Matt has just explained. The reason we're together today is because we've realized that both of us have an expertise in the area, in the arena of entities. And I was really, really interested to hear Matt's story today in regards to how he first came across entities, and how that has progressed since he's been doing this. So I'm going to ask you that question, Matt. Tell us how you first became aware that entities were a thing.
well, first of all, in the way that I was like kind of classically trained, I didn't believe in entities, even like with my background religiously and stuff like that. Like growing up, like I didn't really think that was a thing. And even some of the people that I've come across, they're like, "Oh, this dark thing's attacking me," and then you find out, okay, you're just not dealing with something. So they just kind of mislabel it. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and I think that's what kind of blocked me from having this awareness initially. But it was kind of session after session where it's like something was just off. You can feel it was off, but you can't put your finger on it. And I didn't know what that was. It wasn't until I had one session with a person where I was communicating through what I thought was her higher self. So in these sessions, the person's higher self comes through and they're speaking on behalf of their higher self. Usually it's like this higher level wisdom and knowledge and guidance. And I asked the question, what she needed to do for, I don't even remember what it was, for something to heal. And the answer that came through was, she needs to die. Like, okay. I'm like, so maybe I was missing something. And like, yep, she needs to just kill herself. I'm like, oh, I guess that's probably not her higher self. It was pretty obvious at that point. And I'm like, I was at a loss. I remember sitting there like, I don't know how to help you. And I just like, that stuck with me so strong. And I was like, I have to figure this out. If I want to be able to continue helping people in the way that they need, I need to have more tools in my toolbox, and I need to figure out what the hell's going on. So I started asking around. I I had some friends that were doing some of this other work, and it's pretty aggressive, like the approaches that they took to clear some of these energies and stuff that were interfering. And it just, something didn't feel right with that either. And then that kind of nudged me more towards some of the shamanic approach. And then I found out, oh yeah, these people have been dealing with these for thousands of years. This isn't like a new thing. Like, I have to like reinvent something. So, yeah, that was kind of the nudge that I got. And then that's kind of the path that I followed. And even in that, there's different ways to handle things. So I've kind of pulled from here, and then I'm like, okay, how can we help you? And I think one of the biggest things was I would just stay curious. I'm like, let's ask it. Okay, your voice switched, like, well, who am I talking to? Well, why are you here? And then when you start asking better questions, you start getting better answers and you get more of the story. So yeah, it's been pretty eye-opening from there.
It's quite funny because as I listened to you talking and explaining your journey, I'm smiling inside because literally the exact same thing happened to me. And I remember early on when I started in the quantum space, this one particular client turned up to my office, and I mean, I didn't really know much about energy back then. You know, I'd not really fully stepped into that space. But when this particular client came into my office, I felt this dark presence enter at the same time. And once I'd got her on the bed and, you know, we'd done the regression and everything, this voice literally just boomed out of her and basically told me to F off because this BITCH is mine. And I was like, okay. Can I ask who it is that I'm talking to? Same as you, because I mean, when you're thrown into that type of scenario and you've been fed all of the everything's great, everything's light, just follow this script and you're going to connect with the higher self, and you know, you kind of not taught any deviation from that, that when the deviation occurs, if you don't know what you're doing, it can be, I'm not going to say scary, although back then it was pretty scary, but now I know better. Yeah. Now I've been in that space long enough, I know that there's nothing to be scared about. But you definitely have to have the tools, as you say, in your tool belt to be able to deal with these things as they come up, because these energies are the darkest energies. And if they are strong enough to give you that direction through their human that you are to back off, then you've got to bring absolute strength, and in my opinion as well, compassion, into that situation. And with those two energies, strength and compassion, you've got everything that you need in order to be able to deal with it. So that being said, tell me a little bit more about the kinds of things that you've experienced. And for you now as a practitioner, what are the key indicators that kind of tick a box for you with your clients when you're thinking about entities?
I love that question. That was a great question. I usually find that most of the time it's not this thing that I can't see everything as being from the light. Some are just really far removed from it. So like, well, maybe it's just showing up to hang out, you know, it's like, or it's just attracted to something. It may not know where it needs to go, or, and what I find is beautiful about this process is you're helping them out. You're helping this energy to move on and to like go into its next life or go where it needs to go. And it's like, you're actually freeing up both parties. So I find that really beautiful. And if you do it right, it's a win-win-win for everyone. So I love that you mentioned that compassion piece of it, because really when you come from that, I've had ones come through in like mediumship readings and thank me for helping like them to move on. And I'm like, wow, I never thought about how like profound that was for like the other side too. You know, you usually just focus on the client, but I always find that there's a relationship too. You know, just like in the real world, there's a reason that that was drawn to the person. And if you're in the real world and maybe you're like, you're at a low point and you're like, say you're looking for a friend, guess what? Something shows up. And like,
Yeah.
maybe in the real world, like, I don't know, Steve moves into your house. And then it's like, all of a sudden it's like 2 months later and he's still sleeping on the couch and you're like, okay, dude, time to go. But like in the non-physical world, we don't realize that these things are still hanging around and they're draining our energy. And like, it's sneaky too, because it almost seems like they are us. And so until you start this process of like separation and like differentiation, that it becomes apparent like, hey, wait a sec, this isn't me. And those thoughts kind of bleed into our own, but it's also mirroring something within us. So what you said about bringing out, like, what are some of the things that check the boxes? I noticed when I listened to the language first, you talked about the pre-talk, how like you're listening to the person, what they're saying, and they'll be like, oh, I just haven't felt like myself in a while, or like, or they'll have some weird thing that's not them. Oh, every time I drive by my grandparents' house, I get so mad. I don't know what it is. I'm like, okay, it's not you. Just when things start to feel off, I usually know. It's usually like a knowing or a feeling for me, or like we talked about the animals, like when the cat starts hissing when they walk in the door, like okay, something else here.
Yeah.
And those are usually kind of some like key indicators. So I notice when I have a person that I'm working with and they're in that state, all of a sudden when things start getting uncomfortable, it goes into survival mode. So it'll start moving all around their body. It'll be like a distraction, like, oh, it's in my head. Oh, it's in my foot. Oh, it's in my arm. And I'm like, okay, you know you're on the right track then. Or if they get up and try to leave, I think we're done. We can be done. Let's sit back down. It's pretty cool to watch, but you can start to pick it out a lot easier the more that you do it. It doesn't have to be as obvious, but the more you question, the more you start to like kind of tease it out, the more obvious it becomes.
I also think as well that those the clients that will come that have entities, they look very, very distracted, very shifty. They will want to use the restroom more than normal. The second you start to regress them, they'll be like, I need the restroom again. And you will say, well, we have just used the restroom. I do think that your bladder is empty because we know that you've just used the restroom. Let me just work with you for a little bit longer and we'll see if we can alleviate that pressure, because you know it's an entity. And if you let them go, then you know the entity can potentially skedaddle whilst they're off in the bathroom. Something that I learned over time with dealing with a multitude of these things, literally, is that what you said back then is absolutely on the money. It's spot on. We go through an emotional trauma as a human. So I'm going to get my little teaching tool out now because it just helps me regulate my thoughts. We go through a certain emotion as a human. So say, for example, it's sadness. And that is connected to the sacral chakra. So the sacral chakra should be joy. But when you are sad, then this makes this sacral chakra vibrate lower. The light, the resonance of light in the sacral vibrates lower. What happens then is you become a magnetic match, a resonance for these entities that need to attach to that specific bandwidth of light to survive. And you will pull those energies in and they will attach. And then you might have gone through that period of sadness and be coming out the other side. But your little hitchhiker that got in there will stay in there until you remove it. And that's effectively what we're doing, isn't it, in these sessions? And this is something that I will show to my clients and students. So over time, say for example, something makes you go into fear and that affects your root. Something makes you sad, that affects your sacral. Somebody guilts you or shames you and takes your confidence away. Somebody suppresses your throat, so on and so forth. Over time, you end up looking like that. So the only light you've got going in is the light from the root. And because this represents these attachments to these entities that are siphoning all of your light. And so that's what causes physical diseases in the body as well. It's a combination of the emotional negativity that starts in the mental body, goes into the emotional body, then affects the energetic body, which then affects the physical body. So if you can start helping people in the mental body and the emotional body before it gets to the energetic and the physical body, then we would not have to be in this situation at all. And these entities would not be able to attach to us. But our world has been kept so traumatized and so sad and so in fear for so long that it's just an absolute feeding frenzy for these entities. Humans are like the ultimate food for these beings. And you know, that's talking about a dark entity, but many of the entities that we will find are earthbound spirits, aren't they?
Yeah.
So the energies of a human that, instead of going into the light, off up to source when they leave their physical body, they become bound on earth due to a trauma, terror, a strong addiction, or a strong possessing feeling over a person or place. So if humans that lose access to their physical body become bound on earth, they then become really scared and really nervous because nobody can see them. They're freeze framed in their mindset that they were in when they died. And then, say, for example, your next client is an alcoholic and that's why he's coming to see you, but he's stood in a bar and this earthbound spirit comes in trying to get a drink because he's an alcoholic. That's why he crashed his car and died. And the two end up pulling together. And I don't know if you've noticed this or found this in your work, that when you work on somebody that's got an addiction, they can have, you know, up to hundreds of earthbound spirits attached that are all addicted.
They're looking for the same high, really, and they're experiencing it through that individual. So it's like, oh, they can still get what they were chasing in this lifetime, and oh yeah,
It's
lots
incredible,
of
isn't it?
stories. It is. I love that we didn't talk and we came to the same conclusions, like independent of each other. Like that says a lot for, I don't know, for where we're at. So
That's why I wanted us to have this conversation, because I think we've been going a similar length of time and we've had similar experiences and we live in different countries. And I think it's really important for anybody that's in this space to understand that entities very much are real. There are different types of entities. You know, there's the darker ones that siphon the energy from the chakra system. There's earthbound spirits, as we just discussed. There's dark parasites. There's AI. You can find implants in people as well, can't you?
and even as a practitioner, this is kind of like an occupational hazard. If you're doing this in an unhealed state, guess what? You're gonna pick up some of these things because they'll attach to you. So if that happens to me, I just see it as an opportunity because I'm like, oh, here's something I'm not addressing within me that needs to be healed. So when you can shift your focus and look at it like that, the fear isn't there. These aren't something scary. It's like they don't have an agenda either. Like you said, like they're just. It's like saying like a virus is evil or a bacteria is evil. No, it's just doing what it knows how to do. And like they're not out to get you. They're not out to attack you. It's like they're just being them. And when you can realize it for what it is, then a lot easier to work with.
They just want to feed, and they are at the level of consciousness that they are in.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's, you know, one that feeds off of sadness, they will keep you perpetually sad. If it's one that feeds off of guilt, they'll keep you perpetually guilty. If it's one that feeds off of fear or anxiety, they'll keep you perpetually anxious.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the indicators that I have on my client forms are around those particular emotions, if you like. And obviously, if people say, yes, I'm always anxious, you will normally find that somewhere on their form, they've had a severe trauma that's affected their stability. So like a divorce, a death in the family, loss of finances, loss of house, something like that. So that's affected the root chakra, which the opposite of stability in the root is fear and anxiety. And so then that makes them a magnetic match for an entity that particularly resonates with that energy that is in the root, and they pull one in. And then that person will have sciatica and lower back problems because that's where the root chakra is in the body. And you start to see all these trends and you think, if only the mainstream could understand this as humans, we could heal so much quicker. But I do actually think that that is coming, and I really, really do feel it is, because there's a really great book, and if you haven't read it yet, you must read it. It's called The Others Within Us by Robert Falconer, who is an IFS practitioner, which is internal family systems. And he has literally talked about entity release across every country in the world through time. So through generations and through geographical location. So he talks about shamanism and, you know, the Maoris and all the different groups of humans that all understand that entities are real, that have all been dealing with entity release for eons. And it just seems to be us in the West that are just sort of waking up to this being an actual thing. And so this incredible book, The Others Within Us, the IFS guys, which is mainstream psychotherapy, they are starting to acknowledge entities. They call them unattached burdens. That's what they call entities in psychotherapy. So if mainstream psychotherapy is teaching people how to remove entities from people, then this is an actual thing that everybody who is in this space needs to know.
And think about it, why wouldn't it be? You know, like I'll have a full conversation with some of them. They'll tell me their whole life story and everything and what they were doing before they died. And like, okay, really, is the person making all that up? Like, like I don't know how you can refute a lot of this stuff. And I think it's something that people need to be aware of, especially if you work in like the mental health fields. If you work in a hospital, you work in hospice, you do like healing work. Like it's an occupational hazard just to be in those environments, you know. So like, if you can understand this at least at a base level, you can actually like, start working in the space and heal.
I've done lots of sessions with paramedics and nurses,
Mm.
and the amount of earthbound spirits and dark energies that you will take off of people that are at the direct front line in the medical industry, you know, surgeons, doctors, people that are there when people are dying. You will find so many earthbound spirits attached. And one particular paramedic that I worked with, who actually trained with me in the end, he left.
Cool.
He left being a paramedic because he realized what it was all about, and he came to train with me, and now he does what we do. We removed earthbound spirits from him where he had been the first one to show up at the scene, where people had taken their lives or people had died, and we talked to those actual people via him in the sessions. And this is the kind of thing that we deal with. And for you and me, this is the day job. This is what we do. This is normal.
Yeah.
So it's so difficult, isn't it, when you go out into the real world and you have to mingle and people say, so what is it that you do? What do you normally tell people that you do?
Well, the other day, someone asked me that, and I was just like tired of explaining. I'm like, I don't know, stuff with people. 'Cause I just generically, I just usually say like, I guide people to heal themselves. So
That's beautiful.
anything physically, emotionally, mentally, and how that looks is so drastically different for each person. But you know, it all falls under that balloon. So that includes the entity and release and stuff. So. I usually when in a session too, I don't even say entities. They're like, oh, there's just this sad red energy that's in your chest. Okay, let's just talk to it. And like, because you know, if people can address it like that, there's no like resistance. They'll help you to help it move on, and like, it doesn't have to be this big thing. It's actually this loving process that you get to do for them, for the energy that's attached to them, and for yourself.
Because I always think about these energies, particularly the earthbound spirits.
Mm-hmm.
If you were a human that had lost access to your physical body and you died, but you were terrified when you died, so you didn't dare go into the light, or you felt that you didn't deserve to go into the light, wouldn't you want somebody to come in and find you and help you?
Yeah, yeah.
Wouldn't that be, you know, your deepest and dearest wish, that somebody would know you were there and they would help you.
Yeah.
So I think for me,
Love that.
what we do is it's very sacred work. It's very profound. It's very loving. And I think providing you come at it with the right energy, which is absolutely compassion, but with strength, then those two energies are perfect for entity release. And you know, it's what's the word I'm looking for here? It's tough work because you hear a lot of things, and you know, some of those things, they really move you. But what you have to think at the end of the day is not only are you helping your client to get rid of layers of density they didn't even know they were carrying and move into their best self and vibrate higher, but you're also helping those entities to go back into the light and to be who they really are. And that is just the most incredible thing. And I know there's many amazing jobs out there, but I personally think our job is the coolest.
Same.
So is there anything else that you would like to mention or talk about in regards to your journey with entities?
I think it's a beautiful process, and most of the ones I find are really like the disincarnate souls, or just like the just energies. I don't even really see, like, even if it's like the darkest dark energy, it still has a story. It still has why it's there, and you can still help it to move on in the same way. I find that a lot of the ones that are stuck here are worried about like judgment on the other side. You know, if it wasn't a fast death, where it like kind of like pulled them out of their body quick and they're just confused. But like they're worried about judgment, they're worried about going to hell, they're like all these religious things. So you actually have to heal the entity to allow it to move on. Otherwise, like like I'm not moving on. That's the reason I didn't go in the first place. So you have to like be able to talk them through, like, oh yeah, this is this light that's within you. You're part of this divine spark. It can't be extinguished. And once they realize that, then they'll usually go. And usually the thing that seals the deal is having someone come forward that they recognize that's not you. And then it's like, okay, there we go. And then they can go freely, but once they have to like kind of come to those on their own terms. So you're actually doing a healing within the healing session.
There's a lot to be said, isn't there, for the power of consciousness, because it is what that individual believes that will keep them bound in that lower astral plane. And because they might feel ashamed about some of the things that they've done in their life, or they might think that they don't deserve to go, you know, to heaven, as many people are, you know, that's the terminology that people associate with. That is the reason that they don't, because they don't think they will be welcome. So people like us having that conversation with them and saying, buddy, you're more than welcome. We're all here for you right now. We've come into this place, in this darkness, in this realm, to lift you up. You are welcome. You are loved beyond all measure, and we are here for you today. And to move those guys on, I think that is really, really satisfying to be able to do that. Any other crazy sessions that you want to mention that you've done that you've thought, wow, I'm really glad I knew a little bit about entity release before this particular client came along?
Some are just, I would say, pretty energetic. Like, you know, they're like flopping around and yelling in different languages that neither of us know. And it's like, but you can address it the same way. At this point, I'm just sipping my tea and like, all right, sort it out. And they eventually figure out what they need to from there, and they'll translate for you, and you can move it along in the same way. But if you didn't know what you were doing, it'd scare the crap out of you.
Yeah.
So. I find you mentioned like some other, like, or asked for if there's other like key pieces of this. I find, and you do this in your work as well, but you talked about where they get attached. Some people do entity release, but they don't heal that core wound. So guess what? You got rid of the entity, but then something takes its place. I just talked to someone recently, and she's like, "I do an entity clearing every day." I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "I do an," and she said it again, and I'm like, "Don't you ever wonder why they're there?" Or like, like you have to go, you have to take that a step further and actually heal that core wound or that crack in your field or whatever, however you see it. Otherwise, something else just comes in. Okay, you help something to move on, but you didn't actually heal that core space. So,
And that is, I'm so glad you said that, because that is so important. And that core wound will always come back to emotions, which come back to a trauma. So that person has to go back into the original trauma and go into that space with somebody like us and help that part of themselves, which very often can be a childlike part, to heal, to go in and reframe the memory, if you like, of what actually occurred. Because when you go in and reframe what it was that occurred, the consciousness doesn't care that it isn't actually in the moment. It just feels better. And so then what happens then is, if you actually heal the emotional body of the client, once you've removed all of these entities and you've brought their light back in, that will stay. And if these are all vibrating in those particular colors, in the true resonance of what they should be, no entity can get in. I actually believe we used to look like that a long time ago. But the first fall fractalized them out into the colors of the rainbow. So we've got to get our colors back and then encourage the energy centers to work together as a team, because they're stronger together if they work together. And when they do that, eventually we'll look like that. And I think that is human ascension. When we get to that, that's when we will ascend. But so a lot of what we do is linked to trauma, isn't it?
That's a beautiful point about what you said. So there's so much fear around this, but like if you're standing in that light, in that power, like really nothing can mess with you. Like there's a lot of people like, oh, you need this for protection, you need this and this, and it's like, if you're in a good space, you wouldn't need any of that. Like, because you're I don't know. There's a difference between being like standing in your own power versus like feeling like you need to like protect yourself from all these things. So
the light within is our biggest protection. And if that light is flowing and is of high frequency, then no entities can come anywhere near us. And how our world is set up, it's all to do with energy, frequency, and vibration. And these things vibrate lower. So if you're vibrating higher, they can't get in. They only get in when we are at our lowest. And that's always linked to trauma. So many people carry them, because what person do you know that hasn't had a trauma?
Yeah.
We've all had them, haven't we? So I think every single human on planet Earth would benefit from what it is that we do.
I think so.
That's the truth.
I hands down. I want to run something by you. I noticed this in quite a few people. I get to a point and the energy is not leaving. The entity is like, it seems like it's hanging on, and I'll pretty much always find out that the person's hanging on to it more. They won't let it go. and then I ask them, like, wait a second, like, and then I kind of switch gears. I'm like, okay, what part of you is afraid to let this go? Well, I don't know who I'll be without it. Or like, I'm afraid to lose this part of me. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And the entity's like, I'm trying to leave. They won't let me go.
and that's it. So an example of that straight away. Say, for example, you've got somebody who had a sexual trauma as a child or as a teenager, and that's lowered the frequency of light in the sacral chakra, which has let an entity in. But as they've got older, that entity gives them an edge in the bedroom, because maybe they've not got a lot of confidence either. So having that entity there gives them an edge. So sometimes you can get that symbiotic relationship between the entity and the client, where exactly as you say, it's more the client that doesn't want to let the entity go. Or you can get people that, were abandoned as a child and left by their parents, and they made a deal, if you like, as much as a baby can, with an entity that the entity says, I'll protect you, I'll keep you safe, I'll make sure no darker entities come anywhere near you, but you've got to feed me. And from now on, I'm yours and you're mine. And you can get situations like that that occur as well. Going back to the trauma that we talked about and how trauma as a child can fractalize the mind into parts. You can get a client that will come to see you and say, yes, I want entity release. Please take them all away. But when you get into the session, there can be a part of the client that's like, hell no, he's my buddy. We're not taking him away. And that is a situation like you've just said it right there, where if one will not leave, it is normally because a part of the psyche of the client is not quite ready to let it go. It's been amazing to chat to you today, Matt. I think this chat has been long overdue. It's been an absolute pleasure. If you ever want to get together again and chat about entities, I would absolutely love that.
I'm sure there'll be a part 2.
So for everybody watching this, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.